In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate and talk about Java refresher concepts. We've covered several of these, almost all of these, in the Java intro course, but it's a good idea just to go over some of the basic concepts very quickly, and I'll demonstrate also by doing or creating a simple Java program just so that we understand the core Java concepts. So by far, Java is an object-oriented language. And objects have states and behaviors. So for example, a dog has states like color, name, breed, as well as different behaviors such as wagging, barking, eating. An object is an instance of a class. Now, what is a class? A class can be defined as a template or a blueprint that describes these behaviors or states that object of its type support. So we know the difference between an object and a class, and everything in Java is object-oriented. So the basic concept behind the object-oriented programming is a programming language model organized around objects rather than actions, and data rather than logic. So previously, or historically speaking, when we used to write these programs, they were viewed as a logical procedure, like a series of steps that takes input data, processes it, and then produces an output. On the other hand, object-oriented works differently. The types of variables are either local, instance, and class variables. And we've talked about this in the past, but just so that we can refresh some of these concepts and recall the concepts of you can create a local variable, you can have instance variables, and you can have variables within a class. A local variable is defined inside methods, constructors, or blocks, and these are all, again, local variables. The variable will be declared and initialized within the method, and the variable will be destroyed when the method is completed. So that's just a local variable that we create inside those methods. The instance variable are variables within a class, but they're outside any method, right? So keep that in mind. These variables are initialized when the class is instantiated, and they can be accessed from any method, constructor, or blocks of that particular class. Moving forward, class variables are variables declared within a class outside any method with the static keyword. So whenever we use the static keyword, we're essentially working with a class variable. Methods. A class can have any number of methods to access the value of various kinds of methods. So for example, barking with a set of parentheses is a method, hungry, sleeping are all methods. And as an example, we created a public class called dog, string is breed, the type of integer is HC, for example, then we define the color, and then we create these methods. Constructors. Every class has a constructor. If we do not explicitly write a constructor for the class, Java is going to build a default constructor. Each time a new object is created, at least one constructor will be invoked. And of course, remember the main rule of constructors is that they should have the same name as the class, right? Pretty basic. And a class can have more than one constructor. Here's a simple example of a constructor. So we have the public class called puppy, then we created public puppy, and of course we define or gave the string name, and this constructor only of course has one parameter, which is the name. So anything within those parentheses are parameter or set of parameters. Simple way to create an object. There are 3 steps: declaration, instantiation, and initialization. So a variable declaration with the variable name with its object type. The new keyword is used to create the object, and then the new keyword is followed by a call to a constructor. And this call simply initializes the new object. So just the basic steps, 3 steps of creating an object. Here's an example again, public class puppy. So we created a constructor that has one parameter called name, and then the pass name, it will be name as well. And then the following statement would create an object called my puppy. The source file declaration rules, just to recall some of these rules are essential when declaring classes, import statements, and package statements in a source file. There can only be one public class per source file. It's one of the rules. A source file can have multiple non-public classes, rule number 2. And then the public class name should be the name of the source file, as well as which should be appended by .java at the end. So for example, the class name is public class called employee, and then the source file should be as employee.java. Okay, so keep those rules in mind. Moving forward with these rules, if the class is defined inside the package, then the package statement should be the first statement in the source file. If the import statements are present, then they must be written between the package statement and the class declaration. If there are no package statement, for example, then the import statement should be the first line in the source file. And import and package statements will apply to all the classes present in the source file. It's not possible to declare different import or package statements to different classes within the source file. So just to recap some of these source file declaration rules. Let's talk about Java packages, right? Just a way of organizing your code. So in simple, it's just the way of categorizing the classes and interfaces. So when developing applications and programs in Java, hundreds of classes and interfaces will be written. Therefore, managing and categorizing these classes is a must, as well as makes your life much easier as a developer or as a programmer. Great. Let's apply some of these concepts. So I'm going to create a simple Java program and talk about some of these concepts. Alright, great. So here I'm in the Java Eclipse editor. What I've done is I've created a new project, right? And I've called it Java Advanced. So throughout this course, when we create these programs, I'm going to keep them in the Java Advanced project. So let's go ahead and simply create a new class. I'm going to demonstrate a simple example, let's say, of a do-while statement, right? So just to refresh and get started. So let's go ahead and click on the new class here. This brings up the new class dialog box. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, and I'm going to call it my do-while. And click finish, and it creates a public class called my do while. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and first import java.util.scanner. It's one of the built-in libraries. And once I've imported the util.scanner, that's with a capital S, next I'm going to go ahead and do the private static scanner, and then use the scanner with a semicolon, and of course change the spellings to private. Alright, great. And then I'm going to do public static void, and then of course our main string, which is an empty string at this point, and then our command line argument. Open the curly braces, get our variable in here, scanner equals new scanner, that's the object, and then of course I'm going to use the system.in, and this is the input stream, right, that we use. Put a semicolon, get my int value, which equals 0, and then comes my do while. So I'm going to go ahead, type do, open the curly braces, let's do a printout, so system.out.print, and of course I can use printin or print, and then I'm going to say enter a number, close the parentheses with a semicolon, and then do value equals scanner dot next line, and simply this would advance the scanner past the current line, okay, if the input was skipped. I'm going to use that as a method. Put a semicolon, close my curly braces, and let's do the while value exclamation mark equals, let's say, 5, right? So until and unless you enter 5, it's going to keep doing the loop. And I'm going to go ahead and finally do the system.out.print, and I'm going to say got 5. Great. Let's get rid of these. Perfect. And fix up our simple syntax. It should be value equals, and it should be next int, not line. All right, great, perfect. Let's go ahead and run this. Let's see what the output comes to. Of course, the save and launch dialog box appears, and I'm going to call it my dowhile.java, which is already there. Click OK. And the output in the console below asks enter a number. So what happens if I enter 4? Nothing happens. 2, nothing happens. Enter 5, it says got 5. So just a simple example of a do while program. Let's do another one quickly. Let's do the if-else statement. And I'm doing these simple programs because these are fairly common. As we work with some of the advanced programs, we'll be using these loops quite often, right? So that's why I just want to make sure that we cover the basics and we just run through some of the refresher programs. So next, let me go ahead and create a new class within the same default package. So right click on the default package, new, and then choose class. And I'm going to call this my if statement. Click finish. And it creates a public class called my if statement. So let's begin. Let's go ahead and do our keyword. So public static void main string and our command line arguments. Open the curly braces. Perfect. Let's fix up the spelling. All right, great. So here I'm going to start with the int. Let's say my test score, which equals, and I'm going to set the test score to be, let's say, 92, right? Something like that. Or I can say 90 or 99. How about 90? And then the value for char grade, that's the type here. And then I'll begin with my if statement, right? So I'm going to say if test score is greater than or equal to 89, for example. Open the curly braces. I'm going to get a grade equals A. Next, close the curly braces, and of course else if, right? So if I do not get an A grade, what's going to happen? So I'm going to say else if test score is greater than or equals to, let's say, 80. Open the curly braces. The grade in that case would be, let's say, a B. And I can continue on, right? So I can say something like else if, let me close the curly braces here, the test score is greater than or equal to, let's say, 70. Open the curly braces. My grade in this instance would equal, let's say, C grade. And you can continue to build as per your own requirement. So I'm going to go ahead and close the curly braces and do another else if our test score is greater than or equal to 60 in this case. What's going to happen is I'm going to get a grade of D. And then finally, I'm just going to say else, right? I'm not going to say else if. because my conditions are now over. That's my final step. So I'm going to say else, open the curly braces. I'm going to get a grade equals F. Semicolon, close the curly braces, which is fine. Let's do the system.out.print. And what am I printing? I'm printing grade equals, and then concatenate this with our grade. All right, let's fix the semicolon here. This has to go outside. Perfect. All right, great. Simple if else conditional Java program. So if I were to run this, for example, let's go ahead and click on the run. Brings up the save and launch dialog box. Click OK. And of course, I'll get an A grade. Why? Because of course, my score on my exam is 90. And if the test score is greater than 89, I'm going to get an A. What happens if my score is, let's say, 77? Let's run this again by changing the grade. Click OK. And in this instance, I'm going to get a C grade. So that way, we can work with the if or the conditional statements as well. And similarly, in the previous program, I demonstrated the do while. Here, I demonstrated the simple conditional if statement. So the idea, the objective of this lesson is just to give you the flavor, the concepts of some of the basic Java and the object-oriented concepts, along with a few programs that I demonstrated. So just practice some of these basic concepts. If you've not been working with for a while, just go ahead, take a look at some of these important terms and terminology, and run some programs, create some programs. And with this, let's move to the next lesson.